Today, we're looking at a brown ink by Kaweco Caramel Brown. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. There's timestamps down below so that you can skip around, but if you got the time, I would appreciate if you check out the entire video. Also, if you're interested, you can check me out over on Instagram, and if you're new here and like fountain pen inks, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Noodler's Nib Creeper. I wrote with it for a day and used it to take the notes for this video. I always standardize some of my writing samples by using Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper, although I do use more papers and some of those will be seen later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in cartridge form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. Medium is thus just a tad darker than what we're getting with the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and we're not getting it in the writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a tad darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 11 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 16 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation, and we don't get it. And Rhodia, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. There's a couple little spots of shading that do seem to show up. It took 8 seconds to dry. Medium is a tad darker than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 11 seconds to dry. Now both scrubbies show no color variation, although the extra fine has spots of colors in the writing. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this is a true brown ink. It's not a mix. It's pushing away from water and going from lighter to darker as it moves up. And the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And it traveled a little bit farther up the filter paper, but it basically looks the same, except for the fact that I marked that filter paper. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, that lowercase h that's blown out, I don't use this in a note-taking situation. Nuh-uh, because I value my notes, not if I'm in a highlight. And it's obvious why that happens when you look at what happens with water. Water completely eliminates it from the paper, which follows what happened in the chromatography. It's all that it took to get this out of my pen. Pen flush does everything that water does and nothing more, because you can't remove more ink than all of the ink, like water did. And 1/3 bleach solution completely removes it from the paper, but you're not going to need it. I test viscosity or flow with a thing called a tilt test. I'll link it somewhere down below or up in the cards. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Kaweco's Caramel Brown has a viscosity of 2.32, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples. Now for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Kaweco's Caramel Brown has an average dry time of 10 seconds, making it a fast drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Kaweco's Caramel Brown, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a nice purple, and I chose Robert Oster's Barossa Grape. The second writing sample is done on Levenger, Franklin Christoph, and black and red paper. Here we're looking at Levenger paper. Now we get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no real shading. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. There are a few spots of shading that are going on through this writing. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is much darker than the extra fine, little darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us no color variation for either of them, although the extra fine does have some spots of it. Franklin Christoph paper with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a tad lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 7 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any in the writing. And black and red notebooks with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, spots of shading, just occasional spots that are a little bit darker than some others. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is by far the darkest tone on the page with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 9 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation, although the extra fine did have some light peppering of it. And that's all for writing samples. So what do I think of Kaweco's Caramel Brown? Well, apparently I'm at the beginning of a brown streak. Insert poop joke. I like browns. This is a very nice brown. It shades very nicely. The Kaweco inks that I tested seem to perform very well and be gentle on pens, easy to clean out, and well behaved. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? A very wet pen is going to drown out some of the shading that it has, but a medium flow, medium nib is going to put some very nice brown streaks on the page. Insert poop joke. Nice shading is going to come out in all of those brown streaks. I put out a new ink review every single day, so that if you're not already subscribed, I'm going to remind you, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks for watching.